Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with it's a request. Haven't done a request in a while. Someone has asked me a question and I'm going to attempt to answer it. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Please welcome all our new viewers, Joan. Welcome them. Joan's asleep. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for subbing to my channel. So many of you have. I do take requests if you have a question, especially about screenwriting. But I'll also touch on the woke. If you want to hear my more base takes, though, the stuff I can't talk about on YouTube, make sure you check me out on Bitchute and Rumble. I'm going to try to talk about the woke, but it's really hard. This is my second take. It's really hard without saying something that I know YouTube will flag me for. So I may have to say some words in code. So bear with me. So first the question. Meeksy writes me, what do you think the end goal for all this woke BS? You seem like a smart guy. Thank you. So what do you think their plan is? And this is from my reaction to Santa Inc. Part 2. Santa Inc. Which is, yet another thing that exposes the woke agenda, I'll say. And it's not something that, understand the woke, and I would say Seth Rogen is woke, but I don't think he's aware of what being woke means. I think he just thinks he's being a good guy while simultaneously trying to make his image and persona good. He's genuinely, because I think he genuinely is caught up in it. He's a rich guy. He's probably isolated from what's really going on in news. And so I don't think he's actually sitting around, going, ah, ha, ha, how can I destroy America? He's sitting around going, oh, man, there's a lot of bad people with bad views out there. I think he's got a distorted vision of what the world is. He's an older guy. He's rich. I mean, when you're rich, you're very, very busy. You don't have time to drill down. Who the hell would have time to watch all these videos and read all these books? I'm not rich, and I don't read anything. Not anymore. I used to read a lot. So, in order to talk about the woke, first, let me turn you on to some of the channels I watch on a regular basis. First, and most importantly, there's New Discourses from Dr. James Lindsay. Now, Lindsay is basically a scholar when it comes to wokeness. He has drilled it way down, and he's got tons of videos here. Start at the beginning, and I promise you will be educated. It may be a little heady for you at first, but bear with him. I think he's got a good delivery. I find his videos very enjoyable. Now, if you want something a little more conversational, the Lotus Eaters podcast is very good. This is the Lotus Eaters channel. The channel only has clips of the show and other extra videos they do because the Lotus Eaters are pretty based and they found themselves getting flagged on YouTube and they didn't want to completely get banned on YouTube. So you could only see the podcast on their website, but you could see the whole thing on their website and on the alternative platforms. So definitely check out the Lotus Eaters. I'm a subscriber. They have other things you can get if you're subscribed. And also, too, there's Steven Crowder's podcast. Now, Steven's more of a straight-up conservative with conservative views and a comedian. But he's pretty good on some of the basics, too. And, he's more like me. He'll talk in a lot of layman's terms. And he's very familiar with Lotus Eaters and James Lindsay and other people. And there are others. There are lots of others. But those are three I would highly, highly recommend, especially James Lindsay. So what are we talking about when we talk about the woke? We're talking about not a specific movement, but a broad umbrella of people who have adopted what is turning into a new sort of pseudo-religion. And what they believe is not consistent. And there's a big reason for that. There's lots of reasons, but one of the big ones is something Lindsay said in one of his videos, which if you take away anything from my video, please keep this in your brain. When you're dealing with the woke, you have to remember They use the same vocabulary, but not the same dictionary, as he says. And that means, yeah, they speak English and they say words you understand and get you to agree with them. But they mean those words in different ways. They like these words that are fluid, that they can change meanings. I'll give you an example. When someone says, hey, I started a group and it's an anti-racist group, would you like to join? Most people, most normies, let's say, who haven't heard about the woke or don't really pay attention to any of this crap, say, yeah, sure, that sounds good. I'm not racist. Of course I'll join. But anti-racism doesn't just mean that for these people. Anti-racism is another sort of sub-movement in the woke where you essentially have to confess that you're a racist and you have to confess your racial sins. They don't put it that way, but that's kind of what it's about. And you have to adopt their perspective on race and gender. And if you don't, you're a racist. See, that's the game. It's I guess you'd call it a Kafka-esque trap. I think that's what that means. So you're damned if you do, if you're damned if you if you say, yes, I'll join the anti-racism group, then you're like, great. All you got to do is come to our meeting and admit all your what a racist you are. And then when you go, wait a minute, what? I'm not a racist. That's the whole reason I would want to join your group. And well, you have to admit you're racist. Yeah, I mean, it's really that crazy. And of course, if you say, hey, would you like to join my anti-racism group? And you say, well, if you say no, they'll just say, oh, you're racist. But if you say, like, well, I don't know, what's that all about? Well, you have to admit you're a racist. And then you go, no, what? That doesn't make any sense. And they go, well, see, this is why you're racist. See, anything that disagrees with them, they will call you racist or homophobic or transphobic or whatever. You have to agree with them. They create the path of least resistance is just agree with us. Just agree with us. Just agree with us. But of course, if you agree with them, then you're kind of worse off because you've got plenty of people who have joined the woke and they've still been called out as racist, and because you will, and that's part of their great weakness. They end up. This is why the left eats its own, because eventually they just throw you under the bus if you deviate even for a second. It's a deep-seated mentality that comes out of their ideology, which most of them don't really understand because they're very, very stupid. They're very stupid. You have to understand that these people are weak, insecure, and stupid. That's why they become woke. They become woke because being woke instantly gives them the solutions to everything. Again, it's not really an ideology, it's just a series of tactics, but those tactics are extremely effective. A lot of them come out of a book, which I mentioned in my book, Wokistan, a novel, and which you can also get kind of an idea of the woke from reading my novel. It's a political satire, of course, and Hollywoke, another novel, plug. But the book that I mentioned is Alinsky. Saul Alinsky wrote this book in the 70s called Rules for Radicals. And it's many of the tactics the woke use are from this book. And which is why everything's political. That's one of the tactics. Make the political personal, I believe one of them is. The Lotus Eaters went through that like last year. This is what the woke are. They're tactical, and they must have you. You must bow down to them. And when you don't, that's why they call everybody racist and homophobic and transphobic who don't join them. Because it's all or nothing with them. All or nothing. But it starts very innocently. It starts with, I was just talking about Equality Cape May in my Piney podcast. It's a nice enough group. I'm sure it's full of wonderful people, Equality Cape May. But if you look at their Facebook page, it's a political organization and says so right on the page. It's political. Right? Now, you can support gay people without being political, right? You could say, yeah, I'm fine with gay people. They're great people. I'm totally cool with them. But from the perspective of the woke, that's not enough. You also have to be politically active. Let me sort of wind back the clock to give you kind of the origins, which Lindsay goes into much greater detail than I. But the origins of the woke and the current incarnation of it go all the way back to a German philosopher known as Hegel. And his idea was this idea, now he was around in, I think, the 1800s, 1700s? 1800s. In the 1800s, this guy was saying how we could reach a utopia and eliminate toil. This is the 1800s. Like, there was no way that could, I mean, you could maybe imagine it now, even though it couldn't happen. But my God, in the 1800s, no. Well, like, it was still mostly an agrarian society. You needed farms. You wouldn't have robots in the 1800s. Maybe you could say he was envisioning them, but they were way far from that. And although we have some robots, our robots still aren't to the level where we'll just cut them loose and they'll bring us back food whenever we need them. So, this guy was nuts, in my view. But he was considered an academic because he didn't just put it that way. There was many layers to it. But one of his students was Karl Marx. Now, Karl Marx took some of those ideas, and basically what came out of that was Marxism and communism, right? So the communists basically were like, and the Marxists were like, and I know there's a distinction, but I don't really get the distinction. So, bear with me. I'm giving you my layman's terms of it. But so basically, the Marxists and the communists were all about class struggle, right? So, it was all about evening everybody out. Yay, proletariats, the workers rise up, and then everybody, will bring about this utopia, right? Where the workers will run things and everybody will be equal and get a house and get the same money, and no one will want to stay in charge. We'll just switch off, right? You get to be president one day, then me, then you, and yeah, right. That it doesn't work that way. It never works that way, because no matter who's put in charge, the old saying, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So it wouldn't even matter if communism worked, but because it doesn't. One of the founding fathers said something like, if men were angels, we wouldn't need laws at all. I think it was John Adams. Anyhow, so you have this idea of the communists, and they try it, and everybody dies. Why? Because it wasn't going to work, number one, and there's no way you can make people equal. The only way communism makes people equal is they make them dead or broke or both. Well, both. But first broke and penniless and suffering, and then dead. Literally under the Soviets, you had half the population constantly oppressing the other half. And but if you ask a communist, no, that's not how it worked. And besides, that wasn't real communism, is what they'll say. They're delusional because, again, they want to bring about the utopia. They think it can work. It's just that, well, the other people who tried it, they're not perfect and good like me. See, if you give me the power, I'll make the utopia work. I'll work the hell out of it, and you'll love me for it. It just doesn't work that way. So then came the postmodernists in France in the early 60s. And these guys modified the plan somewhat. And started to morph it into, instead of class warfare, more like race warfare. So it became more about racial identities, but it also became about deconstructing everything. So the idea is, the reason the revolution didn't work the first time was because it didn't go far enough, right? And that wasn't real communism anyway. So this time when we do the revolution, we got to do it right. And a guy by the name of Herbert Marcuse, which Lindsay talks about quite a bit, said he looked at capitalism and said the problem is all these people are happy. See, we got to make them miserable. Right? We got to make them completely miserable so they'll want the revolution. And once we bring about the revolution, they'll thank us later. It doesn't matter how many people die or who gets killed, whose lives are ruined, as long as the revolution happens, because the utopia will happen and then everything will be great. From that point on, the world will be perfect. I mean, they believe in that. They believe in no problems. Not like, well, we'll have mostly good times. No. They believe in a utopia with no racism, no transphobia. Everyone's equal. Everyone has money. Everybody has health care. Everyone has a house. That's what they believe at the core of their ideology. Now, if you ask one individually, they're not going to give you quite a straight answer. Like, they can't articulate it all. They're not bought into all of it. They're bought into some of it, and that they're going to strive towards it. And the more there's sort of like spectrums of commies, and I call them all commies, but there's kind of spectrums of it with the woke commies. And as they get woker and woker, they tend to get more and more communistic. And they excuse more and more, right? So Seth Rogen, like, as recently as, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, wasn't all that woke. Now he's online talking about, oh, bro, don't worry about your car getting broken into. That's just the price you pay in the big city. I had my car broken into 15 times. No big deal. Like, that's part of being woke, to be desensitized to that. That he's so desensitized that he thinks having his car broken into 15 times, that's a lot of times. I mean, I've had my car broken into in Philly, but not 15 times, twice, both times in a very bad area of Philly. I mean, you think Seth Rogen lives in a bad area of LA? And he's had his car broken into 15 times? Anyhow, so the postmodernists sort of modified everything, and now we have the BLM types and other woke members sort of picking up the flag, the Antifa guys, picking up the flag and running with it. And the idea is no limits, number one. Okay, no limits. And when I say no limits, I can't articulate it all because of YouTube, but literally no limits on anything. And they want to also deconstruct everything, tear it all down. It's known as as Lindsay says, a negative dialectic. So the idea is you tear away all the bad and hopefully leave only the good, and then if we do that to everything, well, we'll only have good things, right? The problem, of course, is you can tear down anything. I'm a living proof of a guy who can pretty much complain about anything. So that's why the woke constantly complain. Now, they may just be like me. They just may be complainers. And they just may be miserable people. And a lot of them are very miserable. But the mindset, the ideology behind it says, oh, yeah, you want to tear it all down. So you want to complain about it. You want to tear it all down and show people their hypocrisy and their awfulness and tear it down. Nothing's good. Because at the heart of it, for them, it's all about power dynamics. If a cop helps you, for instance, it's not about him helping you and being a good guy or doing his job. It's about him having dominion over you because he's in the law enforcement class or whatever. Or maybe he's white and you're black or whatever. It's everything's a power dynamic because everything's a tactic and everything's about just give me all the power and I'll make everything perfect. Right? And the Democrats have sort of unwittingly, I think, in a lot of cases, adopted this mindset as well. Yeah, everything's going to hell. Just give us more power and we'll fix it. You know? Like, look at the supply chain crisis, right? What's their response? It's not, well, we have to get more truckers over there, or we have to do X, Y, and Z. It's if everybody gets the vaccine, then the supply chain crisis will go away. What does one have to do with the other? That makes zero sense. I mean, truckers are in the truck. They literally don't have to interact with anybody. You could make a rule saying, okay, you could be unvaccinated and be a trucker, but you can't have any interaction when you reach the destination. You just have to, hand your keys out, sit in the truck, and they'll unload the truck, and then, they'll disinfect everything, then they'll hand your keys back, and you're on your way. I mean, they literally could do that. So could Pete Buttigieg. I mean, he's literally the guy in charge. He makes all the rules. The president makes rules. They could do that. And it would be, you could completely isolate the truckers from everything they truck. But they don't do that. Right? Because it's not about that. It's about, if only you gave us all the power, then your problems would disappear. Why haven't you given us that power? Why? Don't you want your problems to go away? Are you a racist? Are you anti-vax? That's the mindset. So that's the mindset of all the woke. So people get caught up in it, in part of it, right? Whether they're all hyped up about the virus, or they're hyped up about racism, or they're hyped up about transphobia. It doesn't matter. If they get in one cause, if they're caught up in one cause, they get pulled into the rest. Because once you're in the woke, then they pressure you to be more woke, because then you're not woke enough. And it's kind of like a pseudo-religion, right? So, for instance, if you're anti-racist and you don't confess your racial sins, you're not being anti-racist. You're not doing the work, as they call it. And because of that, they'll call you a bigot until you go, oh, okay, I'll do the work then. What's the big deal? I don't want to be a racist. And that's what a lot of normies do. And it tends to be, and I know I'm going to get flack for this, but it's the truth, women tend to be more vulnerable to this than men. Because women have a more nurturing nature, right? And communism and lefty politics says, well, we're going to take care of everybody. And that's very appealing to women and their nurturing nature. Men have a more competitive edge, so they tend to go, wait a minute, I'm not giving you my stuff. I'm not giving you my stuff. That sounds stupid. I'm not taking care of your kids. You take care of your kids. But women are more like, no, we gotta help people. And they take advantage of you on that, ladies, because it's very emotional. But again, there are no limits to the woke. They want to eliminate all limits. They want to liberate you. They'll sometimes say that. You'll bask in liberation. And if everything's liberated, if everything's deconstructed and torn down, what will come next? What's the end goal? Well, the utopia. How do they get there? They don't know. And Lindsay actually maps this out. They actually don't know. But they say, if you do this, if you tear everything down, if you remove all the limits, if you give us all the power, we'll figure it out. We'll know when it happens. Then we'll create the perfect society, and then there'll be no need for government. It just will go away. We'll all live in a communist utopia where everything's perfectly balanced, where there's no racism, no transphobia, no toil, where you'll get money, where you'll be able to, and these people are nuts. They actually believe that you'll live in a society where you won't work and you can pursue your creative endeavors. Now, I'm a writer. Now, think how appealing that sounds to me. When I have to be the responsible one, we're in trouble. I'm one of those heady dreamers who crafts stories in his head while things are crumbling around me and I don't pay my bills. These people, but even I have more sense than that. These people think that, we'll all be YouTubers and rap stars and, we'll all write books and make anime comics. No, that can't possibly work. Who's going to fix the sewers? Who's going to farm? Oh, we got robots to do that. Who's going to fix the robots then? Even if we had those. It's a fool's errand. And did you see the movie Wall-E? What happens to people when you've got plenty of robots to do everything? They all get fat. The difference, of course, in Wall-E They weren't just, having massive orgies nonstop. That would be the other thing, too. This is what happens in Brave New World. And I can't get too deep in it, but again, no limits. I mean, literally, they want to, this is why they said in BLM's website, but they removed it. They want to deconstruct the nuclear family. They want to deconstruct all your relationships. Like, your relationships don't matter. And then it goes all the way back to Hegel. And Hegel believed that the state was the most perfect entity ever invented. And that if we just gave everything to the state, then the state would balance out everything and we'd live in a perfect society. So, I know this is a lot to sort of process, but so when you're dealing with the woke, number one, you have to understand, depending on how woke they are, they're incredibly dishonest and they will use words, which is why you need to nail them down on their terminology if you're in a discussion with one. What do you mean? Right? So if somebody says, well, aren't you interested in equality or anti-racism? What do you mean by that specifically? And if they keep getting more and more vague about it and they don't actually tell you, you have to get down into the details to actually, get at people who maybe aren't as woke as they think. Because when you force them to confront those details, then they go, well, you have a point, I guess. You're not going to red pill them. That'll happen when they realize what a horror show. When they join some anti-racist organization and then the organization is busy arguing for the segregation of kids by their race in school, which is already happening in the Northwest. I mean, they're actually segregating children in the schools, or trying to. It's illegal. So I think they got shot down. And the feds should be investigating that. I mean, that's a form of racism. Back in the day, back in the early 60s, if you were segregating people, the feds would show up on your doorstep in a hot minute. Like, what the hell are you doing? Because back then, it was, the racist down south doing it. But see, our government hasn't acknowledged the racist on the other side of the aisle, the leftist, who have now, again, it's the horseshoe theory. I think I've talked about this in other videos. Like, you go so far extreme, the racist on the right and the racist on the left eventually meet and are on the same page, let's say. Again, there's some things I can't say on YouTube, and I'm sure this would probably be limited ads anyway, because that's the way YouTube is, because YouTube's woke too. The CDC is woke. All these institutions are being infused by wokeness. Now, if you are part of a group and you feel that it's being infused by wokeness, you need to stop it in its tracks. If you have a business, the easiest thing to do is just to ban political stuff from your work, and just be like, no, work's about work. We're not. This isn't a place to do activism. You do that on your own time. And a lot of woke people will just quit, rather than, if they can't do their woke activism in your business. Because keep in mind, again, they want to deconstruct everything. So if you look at something like Santa Inc., why is it so woke and crazy? No one wants this. Look at the reaction to it. This is so unappealing. Why would you make this? The people who are driving the engine, and I don't think it's Rogan or Silverman. I think they're just talent. They don't make that call. But the people who are driving it, the people who are woke behind the scenes, maybe one of the producers or one of the execs, they don't care that it's not going to make money. Right? Because this isn't about making money for them. This is about being woke. If there are two kinds of woke people I'll end with, because I got to start wrapping this up. The one kind is the one who they believe that wokeness will make them money. And to some extent it does. So they pursue wokeness because it will. And this all goes back to another video where I talked about, and other guys have talked about this too, the ESG score. Environmentalism, social, and governance. And this is something BlackRock is pushing, a company worth trillions of dollars. And the idea is it's a score that rates your company's wokeness. And if your company's woke, you get more investments, you get more positive feedback from them, and that's a good thing for your business. So they have so much money and pull that it's worth it to tank, say, a movie or a TV series for these entertainment companies just to get BlackRock to give you a better score and pour more money into you. It doesn't matter that your customers are pissed off and not buying it. All that matters is your score's up and you're still going to get money from the bigger guy. The other kind of woke idiot actually believes this stuff, and I think there are a lot of them at places like Marvel Comics. The Soviets would call them useful idiots. These are the people who actually have bought into it. It might be a guy like Seth Rogen. I don't know if he's totally bought into it. Maybe Sarah Silverman. She's a little more savvy than that, but her savviness is being applied to trying to justify all this woke stuff. Hopefully she'll eventually turn around like Russell Brand did and realize, wait a minute. I mean, even now, Sarah Silverman's calling out Joy Reid, one of the woke tards in MSNBC, and calling her out for being dishonest. And if she keeps doing that, eventually she'll be red-pilled. I have hope that Sarah Silverman might eventually get there, but she's not. She's nowhere near there now. And when she gets there, it might be a very sort of, okay, yeah, I may have been wrong on a few things, but yeah, okay, I'll accept that maybe not every Republican is a bad guy from Germany. But that's a long way off. It's a long way off. In the meantime, to red pill people is very tough. Don't try it without learning a bunch of stuff. That's the main thing from James Lindsay. Don't try to take this stuff on until you have the knowledge. I've gleaned some of the knowledge from James Lindsay, but it's like a martial art, right? You can learn martial arts, but if you're only a belt or two up, you can end up actually hurting people more using the limited martial arts you know. You have to kind of master it to a degree before you're at the point where you can practice martial arts and spar with people without hurting them and perform it regularly. So, being anti-woke, it's like martial arts for your brain, I would say. And it's also being able to endure the ruthless tactics of the woke. And they are ruthless. They are ruthless. Once they start calling you names, they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop at just calling you names on Twitter. They're going to dox you. They're going to try to get you fired from your job. They're going to, they've done it to people. But the upside is if that happens, you're probably doing something right. They feel that you're a threat that needs to be neutralized. So, I hope that has been enlightening. I hope you will check out some of these other YouTubers I've mentioned, especially Lindsay. And, it's the woke, man. Their end goal, tear down all of society, all of it, deconstruct everything, and then, like the underwear gnomes, step 2, step 3, utopia. And that's it for me, Tony D and Little Joan. We'll see you tomorrow.